Hi everyone, and welcome to Sweet Stitches Quilt Shop. I'm Joan, and today is demo day here at the shop, and we are going to focus, our theme for this month is going to be just around the corner. And so everything that you see here today, all the different projects and rulers and patterns, all have to focus on corners. And we do plenty of corners when we're quilting. So let's get started. The first one I'm going to show you is a pattern called Cool Corners. It's by Maple Island Quilts, and what it is a foundation paper pieced pattern, but you're just foundation paper piecing just the corners. And so let me show that to you. You can see in the right and left hand corners there's kind of a zigzag shape that adds a kind of a cool dimension to the quilt. You can use a panel piece in the middle, or a big focus fabric like I have here, and then you kind of want some high contrast fabrics to really show off the jagged edges of the quilt. And so when I did the foundation paper piecing, you actually have to draw out your own pattern onto paper, and what I used was the Select Tearaway stabilizer by Quilter Select. I really like this stabilizer for a lot of things. I like it for when I'm doing my appliques. I put it on the back side, and then I do my machine applique around the edges. And so this paper is really great because it's real thin, but it has enough body to it that your stitches lay nice and flat. And so you can see it's kind of a pretty opaque, not as heavy as freezer paper, and it irons. It has a waxy side to it, just like freezer paper does. And so I drew my pattern out for the jagged edges on the front side of the paper, and then I used a light box, and we have Daylight Company light boxes here at the shop, and these are great for being able to see when you do foundation paper piecing. You have to see that you have enough fabric underneath the piece that you're sewing on, plus you have that paper. So being able to put it on a light box helps you see where you are and where you need to sew. And so these light boxes are really cool. This is the smallest one, so I used the much larger size when I did it. And it's easy, and it's really thin, not like the old light boxes. And so it turns on and off. It's got a great brightness to it, and if you hold it down it will dim, maybe if that's too bright for you. But these are a great product to have, especially if you do foundation paper piecing, or if you do applique where you want to trace out your pattern pieces, or if you do hand embroidery where you draw your picture. Maybe you did a basket of flowers that you're doing in embroidery, hand embroidery. You would draw out your picture on your fabric, and these light boxes are really great for tracing patterns. So something to keep in mind, it comes in 3 different sizes. I can't think of all the different sizes that they are right now, but a small, medium, and very large. So, and they all have cutting mats that are clear that can set on top of them too, in case you want to light up your cutting surface for cutting your fabrics out, or even with your foundation paper piecing projects. And while I'm on the subject of foundation paper piecing, Marty is working on a new foundation paper piecing class for us. It's going to be a really cool star that she's put together, and hopefully that'll be done in the next couple weeks here. It might get on the calendar down at the bottom of the month, but if not, it'll probably be in February, definitely. She's a great teacher. She really knows how all the tips and tricks to working with foundation paper piecing, and you might want to keep that class in mind. Before I move on to the next subject, I just wanted to say, because there's so many seams here out at the edge of the quilt, what I did is I went around, and you can probably see it here in this dark thread that I used, but I went around the entire quilt and stabilized the edges of it. And you can do this for any of your quilts. It helps keep them from stretching when you're quilting or when you give it to the long arm or to quilt. Now, when I go around the corners, I don't go around the corners. What I do is I sew down one side, and then I sew down the next side, and then I sew down the next side, so that we can, so that you don't get any puckering when it goes around the corner. So just a little tip to, help keep your quilt tops from stretching before you get them quilted and during quilting. And so this is the Cool Corners quilt, and it was fairly easy to do. I don't really do a lot of foundation paper piecing, but I got through it just fine. The next little project here that you can do to help hang your quilts is the little corner pockets, and you sew these in as you're putting on your binding. And so right here in the corner pockets, I have it in matching fabric, so it's a little hard to see, so I'm going to stick my fingers inside there. But what it is they're two little pockets. They're totally secure inside the binding, and you can take a little dowel rod and stick it in, and it's a great way to be able to hang your quilts. A little 3M hook and you're set. And it's not permanent. You're not going to have to nail something into the wall or anything, or buy a fancy quilt rack, something that you can take up and down. So this is an advent calendar that we did this Christmas, and these are the corner pocket hangers. And you can make them out of the matching backing fabric. Okay. Corners. So I have found a new ruler that is going to be, I'm going to have one in my sewing room at home, and I'm going to have one here at the shop for whenever we need it, because it really comes in handy and it's very accurate. We're going to use it in the upcoming block of the month that's going to be starting in the end of February. There's a lot of folded corners. So you might have had a few patterns where maybe when you did flying geese, where they want you to take a rectangle and they want you to put a square on top of it, and they want you to draw a line and then sew on that line and then flip this back like this. I don't know how many times you've done it, but I have done it a million times where I didn't quite sew it straight enough, or I didn't quite sew it on the line, or I didn't sew to the inside of the line, or I sewed to the outside of the line, and the triangle comes up short. And so this ruler that I'm going to show you helps prevent that. And so what it's called, it is the Folded Corner Clipper. It's by Creative Grids. It goes up into 5 inches, and what it does is it eliminates drawing on your fabric and then sewing on the line and then flipping it back and being irritated. So what you do is you would lay your square on top of your rectangle if you're making a flying geese. You would line the ruler up at the bottom and trim. What it does is it adds the extra 1/4 inch that you need, and you would trim this away. And it would look like this. Then you would sew with your 1/4 inch foot on your machine. And I didn't even have to do a scant 1/4 inch. You can just use a regular straight up 1/4 inch. You don't have to play around with your machine to try and get it where you want it. But they fold up really nicely. Here's an example of one. You have plenty of 1/4 inch above the point so that you don't cut your points off. So that's how the ruler kind of works as far as it trims away the corners. It adds that 1/4 inch, and it actually cuts off the dog ears too, which those little points can get down in your feed dogs if you're not real careful, and it's very frustrating. So that kind of eliminates that frustration too. So that's the Flying Geese unit. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can use this ruler. And so another way that you can use the ruler is for the other way that you can use the ruler is for half square triangles. And so here's your half square triangle. These are 4 little half square triangles sewed together. And how you would do that is you would lay your, in this case I used a 2.5 inch strip, and you lay the ruler on and you trim. And what you do is you put the 2.5 inch strips together, right sides together. So as soon as you're done cutting them, they're ready to put into the machine. So they're already right sides together and ready to sew that 1/4 inch. And so you're going to work the ruler down and then up and then down and then up all the way down your strip. And you can do up to a 5 inch half square triangle with this ruler. And it's just a really great ruler for getting those, those folded corners cut perfectly. You can see here both the dog ears are cut off the ends, so it's ready to just sew right down the edge here and to create your half square triangle. You can also do diamonds, or a diamond and a square, as it's sometimes called. And so this one you would do a large square, 2 squares on the ends opposite of each other. You would trim those, okay, and then you would sew those 2 edges. Then you would go and add on the next 2. You would trim those. You would trim those with the ruler and sew those, and then you end up with a square and square, like that. So far we have flying geese, half square triangles, square and a square. You can also cut binding. It's great for cutting your binding strips. And so if these are my 2 binding strips, I'm going to put them both right sides up. Okay, so I'm just going to stack them on top of each other. I'm going to line my ruler up on the edge. I'm going to cut my diagonal cut, and then they're going to I don't have one cut, but they're going to fit together like this without having all of this extra that you'll have to trim off later. It'll just be perfectly cut and you just sew down there and with your 1/4 inch foot, and they are perfectly lined up when you get done with them. So binding. Then you can also do a corner square where you have 2 corner squares opposite of each other, and this lends itself to a lot of different quilt block arrangements, and I'm going to show you a couple of those. So one way that you can arrange them is in an X pattern. So here we have the X, or you could flip them opposite way and you have your O's right here. So great blocks for upcoming Valentine's Day, X's and O's. And these also can make a really cool little spool quilt too, if you put them on their side here and make your half square or your corner square go corner to corner instead. It would make great little spool quilts too, or spool block I should say. So X's and O's. Then you have where you can do 3 corners. And so you would have your 2 corner, you add your 3rd square, you put the ruler on, you trim, you sew, you flip it back, and you get this unit, which can also make an X block. So one of the little quilts that I made, I've seen this quilt on Pinterest a lot, but usually it's done with bigger squares, and so I just made a little mini version because if I want to get a whole bunch of things done for demo day, I need to make smaller projects that I can show you lots of different things. And so this is a quilt. It has cascading triangles in the warm colors, and then you have kind of a zigzag pattern that the cool colors make. And it's just made with the block with 2 corners on it. So it can lend itself to a lot of different designs. And so with the ruler, and this is called the folded corner clipper, and it's by Creative Grids, just to remind you. With every ruler, you get directions on how to use the ruler and all the different uses for it. You can also go on YouTube, and if you put in the name Creative Grids Folded Corner Clipper, you can see all of the different projects that they've made with it and how they use it, and they'll give you a demonstration on how to use it too. So, but it's always nice, I always keep these with the ruler, so, you know, in case I have forgotten how to use the ruler, I keep a whole book full of the different creative rule directions for the rulers. So, on my table a little bit there. So when you're using the folded corner clipper, it's really handy if you have a rotating cutting mat. We sell them here at the store, of course. And I also prefer to use, if I'm using a small ruler like this, you know, this isn't a very big ruler at all, and I'm going around points, I like to use a smaller rotary cutter too. So I like the 28 millimeter for when I'm working with trimming things. And the rotating mat is a must. You don't have to pick up the piece that you just trimmed. You turn it around and you just pick up your ruler and put it on your fabric and trim off the next side. So 2 great things to have if you're working with trimming up any kind, you know, if you're trimming with any kind of ruler. Great products to have on hand. Great one to add to your sewing room anyways. So one of the other, a couple of other projects that I made with this ruler are the Imposter runner or quilt, it says. And so this is a pattern by Creative Grid Designs, and the patterns are $3.50 because they know that you're going to spend the money on the ruler, and so they make the patterns affordable. They're nice because you can put them in a binder and keep them all handy. So the first quilt, the Imposter, what it is, it looks like a hexagon, but it's not really a hexagon. What it is you are going to use the tool to trim off. You'll start with a rectangle. This is a 2.5 inch by 6.5 inch. And you're going to use the tool to trim off the edges of both corners, and that leaves you with a trapezoid shape. And so you have a bunch of the different trapezoids in lights and darks, and these are just some leftovers that I have. And then you also have a couple of half square triangles that finish off the ends down here. So there's 6, 7, there's 8 at each end. And so this is the Imposter runner, and then they also have a quilt size too, like a children's or a baby quilt size. And this is using Zen Chic's fabric line that we got here in the store. I like it, nice neutrals, and then just a black background fabric and black binding, and just some straight line quilting. That's all I did on this one. I put the walking foot on, and what I did is I just followed the edge of the line and did a 1/4 inch on this side and a 1/4 inch on that side. Speaking of binding, I do have a binding class coming up this month, a couple of times this month. And if you really want to work on getting your corners nice, it's a great class for that. I've also decided to add to it how I do the machine binding. Remember I talked about that last month with the G foot. If you have a Janome or Elna sewing machine, there is a blind hem foot. I believe it's the letter G, and it helps you helps hold down the binding as you're putting it on by machine. This one I did by hand, and you'll learn that in the class too. But it can help you with getting your corners nice and sharp. So the next project I have that I made with the folded corner clipper ruler is the Easy Street Table Runner. And so this is another Creative Grids pattern that what it does is you take rectangles and you add the folded corners to all 4 corners, and it creates these kind of pod shapes or kind of prism looking, crystal looking shapes. This is the Easy Street Table Runner. This one was done in blue batiks. And what's great about this ruler is when you trim off your corners, you have what are called bonus corners. And so those can be made into half square triangles. And so this pattern uses the leftover triangles to create the border that goes around the quilt. And it's a great way to use every bit of your fabric. It's a very easy pattern I made this in one evening, and I put the binding on by machine. So I cut it out, I sewed it together, I quilted it real quick with just an, kind of an all over pattern, and put the border on and the binding on. The border I could have done a little bit better. I cut off some of the points, but we're not gonna pay attention to that. So we all do that, right? This is the back side of the quilt. It's just the plain, nice blue color. But this would make a great table runner for the winter time, or all year round if your color scheme is blue. But you can do it in any color you want. And this is called the Easy Street Table Runner. So as I was cutting out all these different table runners and blocks to show you how the ruler is used, I looked around my room and I noticed that one of the quilt blocks that I was working on, well, I haven't been working on it for a while. It's one of those that you put aside because, other things come up or other projects spark your interest. But now that I have this ruler, I definitely am going to finish up this next one. And this is called Color Burst. You probably saw, it's probably during the summer when I showed this one. I made one block up and I haven't gotten any farther, but I definitely wanted to use this one because great tool to create the different shapes. The ruler will be a really great tool to create the different shapes, because if you look up here in this corner, this is a 3-corner square. So we trim off 3 corners with the ruler and create this shape. The next shape, this middle one, it is a 2-corner square. So we would cut off 2 corners that are right across from each other to create the star points. And then the center block is a square and a square. So you would do 4 clips with the ruler on all 4 corners. And so this is going to make making this quilt a lot easier than marking, trimming, getting upset because I didn't quite have enough triangle at the edge there. So the ruler is really going to help me get these all done. And these are a bunch of the different colors that I'm going to use in the quilt. So far I've only got the orange and black, but lots of fun colors in this quilt. So one of the other projects from a previous video that I hadn't finished, I had finished one block to show you how it goes together and how it looks, is from the cherry picking pattern. It is a template. It's kind of like a tumbler block, similar to that. But what it is you're creating 4 patches of squares, and then you're laying the ruler on, similar to twister patterns. If you have a twister ruler, you might understand the method of that. But you put the ruler on and you have these lines on the ruler that you line up on the square, and then you cut out the different shapes. And so this is the shape that we're making right here. And how you make that is you cut out the different squares, and then cut out the tumbler, sew the squares together, cut out the tumbler, and then you take these tumblers and you will fold it in half, and you're going to sew corner to corner across the larger side, and then you're going to sew corner to corner across the smaller side. When you flip them inside out, it creates the Dresden points. So if you see this point right here, this is all finished. It's turned under, and so is the inside or part of the Dresden. And so then you just lay them together and you sew 1/4 inch seam down each one of them, and it creates this Dresden block here. It's just like a patchwork Dresden, and it's really kind of has a neat look to it. This one I did, I think, in, it was probably October video. And so I did it in October colors. Actually, Linda actually helped me with this one. She made up all the Dresdens, and then I did the applique part. And they were just on solid white backgrounds, squares. So I thought, this is kind of boring. I thought I'm going to have to really trim these down because there was a lot of white. And so when I started playing with this ruler, I thought, well, that's a great way to use this ruler. And what I did is I took my leftover squares that I had, and I put them in the corners, right sides together. I put my ruler on the square, it went this way, and I trimmed the corners off. That's a little scary after you've done all the applique and everything's all perfect on the block, but it works out perfectly. So then to each of the white blocks, I added a corner square to each one, just to add a little bit of, I don't know, pizzazz. And then I added all the extra little pieces that I had around to make the border on the outside of it. So it turned out pretty cute. I'm going to quilt this one up. And when I did the applique, I mentioned in the video previously, I used Quilter Select 80 weight. It's a poly wrapped cotton core thread. It's super fine. It's kind of like a hair. Here it's yellow, so it's kind of hard to see. But it's nice because it doesn't, when you do a blanket stitch around the applique, it doesn't stand out as much. So like on this one, this is a scrappy quilt block. So it's kind of nice just to be able to show off the quilt block, but make sure that everything is still secure with the blanket stitch too. So it makes a really nice for machine applique, and it's really nice for hand applique too, because it's so fine and so strong to do your little applique shapes with, that it really hides the threads when you do hand applique. Machine applique, you want to show them off. But it's a great thread to try, and if you're doing anything where you don't want a heavy thread, you want it thin so you can get your seams opened nicely, or if you do English paper piecing, it's a nice fine thread for that. So you might want to give that a try when you're in the shop. It comes in lots of different colors, and it's the 80 weight Quilter Select poly wrapped cotton. When I did that quilt, the cherry picking quilt, Dresden, when I trimmed those corners off, you're left with bonus corners. And so those bonus corners were much bigger, and so you can get a very good size half square triangles. You know, no sense in wasting that. You might as well make them up and use them in a scrap quilt, or make a little table runner or a little wall quilt out of them. So don't waste those little bonus triangles that you get from using the corner clipper. So as I was doing research for the different projects that I wanted to make using the corner clipper, I was looking up quilt blocks, and I found one that is very cool, and it's called the folded corner quilt block. And it's kind of neat because it has almost a 3D effect where it looks like these corners are folding in because of the placement of the dark and the mediums and the lights in the block. Very neat project, but I didn't use the corner clipper on this one. Even though, you know, that's what I was kind of focusing on, I thought, you know, all of these different sections of this quilt block can be cut out with the AccuQuilt. And it was very easy. So last night, as one of my last projects to make up for demo day today, I made up this block. And so I made two of them. I cut two of them out so you can see how the pieces are cut out. And so here, I've kind of pinned them to my wool cutting mat. And if you don't have a wool cutting mat, you really need to get one. These things are awesome. It doesn't crush your seams. You know, when you're sewing your block together, sometimes those seams can get thick. It doesn't crush them. It doesn't wrinkle up your fabric. It gets nice and hot. They're just really great. And they're great for holding up your projects when you're demoing things. So, anyways, the block, the folded corner block, is made up of a 4.5 inch square, a 4.5 inch by 2.5 inch rectangle, and then we have the larger half triangles, and then we have smaller half triangles, and then one of the quarter square triangles. And so all of these, I took home the cube, the AccuQuilt Cube, and I have a cutter at home. And so what I did is I used the different quilt blocks or quilt dies. And so here we have the larger half square triangle. This is block number 3. So you use that in the 4 corners. You use the quarter square triangle so that you can make your flying geese. And that is block number 4. So you're going to use 3, 4, and you would use one of those. In this case, I needed 4 of them, so it was perfect just to cut all 4 at one time. Those are the outer lighter colored triangles. Then you're going to also use your 4.5 inch square for your center square. And then you can also use your number 5 die, which is the small half square triangle, and those are the darker triangles that you add to the quarter square triangle to create a flying geese block. You can also use the rectangle block, and so this is block number 8, and this cuts 2 triangles at once. So I stacked my fabrics up. I got all 4 blocks cut out all at one pass. It was really cool. So it went together smoothly. It cuts off the dog ears for all of the half square triangles, so you don't have any points that are going down into your feed dogs. It's just a really great block for AccuQuilt. So if you have AccuQuilt, I did mine with the 8-inch cube. It's just a great way to get a block done in no time at all, and it's a fun block to do. So if you want more information about what numbers I use, you can either watch the video again, or you can come into the shop and of course we'll show you how it went together. But it's a fun block to put together. This is called the folded corner blocks. Now you could make the whole thing, or at least the triangle units, with the folded corner clipper too. There's no reason why you can't. So you could do your half square triangles and you could do your flying geese with that. You can cut your rectangles and your squares with just a regular cutting ruler for straight cutting. So you don't have to have AccuQuilt in order to do this, but having this folded corner clipper is very handy too. And since we're on talking about AccuQuilt for a minute there, AccuQuilt also with their cube, with their mix and match cube, they also have what's called the corners cube. And so this one has 4 dies with it that create You have two tiny half square triangles. You have 4 squares where the little corner is already cut off. To use with the little squares, you can make bow tie quilts with this, snowball quilt with that. You can also use, remember this shape was in the blue quilt that I showed earlier, and here you would sew on your triangles from the AccuQuilt Cube. Would fit on there perfectly. They also have a chisel block, which is also one of the folded corner kind of blocks. And so this is a rectangle where one of the corners is cut off, and you would add your half square triangle to that to create different quilt blocks. And each one of them has, an idea card that comes along with each one of the blocks in the cubes. I know we sold 3 of these this week when we had our anniversary sale. And I just want to thank everybody for coming out to that anniversary sale. It was really great seeing everybody, and we appreciate the support that you and the friendship that you've given us over the 4 years that we've been in business here. So thank you for that. So, I've got a couple more things to show you. Next is a new template that I got in. It's for making French braid. And so here is the French braid right here down the middle. And then what I've done is I've put 5 of them together to create this kind of cool pillow. And actually these were leftover fabrics from when I did the hound dog quilt last month, baby quilt. All these red, white, and blues, and a little bit of gold thrown in there. I did a little pillow envelope, so you can stuff your pillow form in there. But it's a fun little block to do, and it took no time at all to do it. Because what you do is you start with cutting all your strips, and it has 2 template sizes. So you have the little template size, and you have the larger template size. And so from there you can cut lots of different lengths of this chisel block is what it's kind of a chisel shape. And so there's great instructions that come along with each one of the templates for creating the mini braid or the larger braid size. But you would cut strips, and then you just take the template and you work your way down the strip, cutting them in both directions. So you want your chisels, one chisel to go this way, you want one chisel to go this way. So that when you put them together, you have half going this way and half going this way. With the templates, you also get instructions on how to put the blocks together. And I'll show you with a couple of the pieces that I have, extra pieces that I had, how I cut those out. And so here are 2 of the chisel pieces, opposites. You're going to take those and you're going to lay one on top of the other. You're going to match up the corners, and you're going to sew across just right here at the bottom, just the length of the chisel block, okay? And that starts your first one. Then you just keep adding on to the outside ones. So in this case, here I have a group started. So you can see that one. My next one will go on down here, and I'm going to make sure that the chisel is all facing the same direction so that I have the same angle. Then I would put the next one on, well, over here would be the next one. But you would sew this on, you would line up your corners, right sides together, and you would sew. You're going to have a little 1/4 inch dog ear that you want to leave on there. This is going to help you line up because you have to trim these in order to put them into columns like this. It's a lot of fun to make them, and this little one was really kind of cute. But I also have a couple of different patterns here in the shop to go along with the templates. And so one of them is called Braided Beauties, and it has a table runner, it has placemats, and well, actually 2 table runners and 2 different placemat styles that you can choose from. But this one adds in an actual square in between the chisel shape. So it kind of adds a little extra to your project. So that's called Braided Beauties. And then we also have shaded braids. And so this one also uses a little square in with the project too. So it's just kind of nice little added on. It's just a nice little detail that you can add to your French braid blocks, or rows I should say, they're not really blocks. And so one more tip that I have before I head out for the day, when you're making pillows, have you ever made a pillow and then you stick your pillow form in it and it gets really pointy on the corners here? The corners of the pillow, sometimes they get a little pokey like this, and what you can do is you can taper your corners by just shaving off a little bit extra off of each corner. You would shave off a little going this way and a little going this way. And what it does is it kind of slightly rounds them without rounding them too much, and can help so your pillow form can reach all the way into the corners of your block. Well, reminders that we do have National Sew Day coming up the first Saturday in February, and we will be, usually we set up tables in here in our machines, and people come in and they make quilt blocks for Quilts of Valor, and then we donate them to the String Along Stars and Stripes group, and they create quilts out of them that they give to the veterans to honor them for their service. And so we can't get together like we used to and have a bunch of people in here all in the same room. So what we're going to do this year is we're going to create little block kits, and we're going to cut them out with the AccuQuilt, so they're all going to be exactly the right size. And you can come in and pick up a kit, and we're going to have you sign them out, and then if you bring them back all put together by February 6th at 4 o'clock when we close, you can be put into a drawing to win gift certificates here at the shop. So it's a great way to help Quilts of Valor. It's a great community project. So come in and pick up your kits. They're going to be, we'll start having those in the shop January 22nd. They'll be all cut up for you. You just have to sew them together. We'll have little instructions for you in the kit, and bring them in, and you can make as many as you want, and you can enter as many times as quilt blocks that you make. Another event that we're going to have here at the shop coming up in February, we do it every year. It's our pregame mystery party, and so it usually happens before the Super Bowl. We usually have about 20 ladies that sign up for it, and they come in and they sit and sew, and they make a mystery quilt in a day. And so this year we can't do that because we can't have 20 people in the classroom at once. We want to be safe. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do it online this year, and we're actually making it free to anybody that wants to follow along. So you can sign up on our website. You would go to Pregame Mystery Party. It is going to be on February 7th. And what happens is I pick a mystery quilt, and each half hour you're going to get another clue to put together, sew together, and by the end of the day you're going to have a whole quilt top made. So it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to get a quilt done for something that you maybe you need a quilt for a birthday gift or something. It's a great way to get a quilt top done in a day. Sometimes we walk away from projects when we take our time making them, but this, on Pregame Mystery Day, we get it all done in one day. So it's a lot of fun, and we'll have more information about that and how we're going to go about doing it, because we haven't totally decided on how we're doing it, but it will be online. And Rob will take care of that part. That's not my thing. So we hope that you can join us. It's free, and you can use your own fabrics, and you'll get cutting instructions and everything. So let us know if you're interested by signing up. If you decide you don't want to do it, it's totally fine. You don't have to. There's no fee. So join us for that, and we hope you all have a great day today, and we'll see you back here in February for Demo Day. Thank you, and have a great day.